Hi guys, happy Friday. Thank you guys so much for being here. Today I want to talk about this thing that I made and how it freaked me out every single step of the way. Hi guys, thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Felicia Lowe from SweetGeorgia Yarns, and today I want to talk about how fear found its way into my creative process and what I did about that. So for many of you guys who have been watching these videos for some time now, since the very beginning, I've been talking a lot about how I want to do more weaving and how it's always a little bit tricky to find time to come up to the attic, to be on the big looms to do my weaving. So one of my big quests for 2018 was to do more frame loom weaving or more tapestry weaving. And so I had started last year experimenting a little bit with just a very tiny loom. So this is like a tiny loom that you can get from Purl and Loop, and it's just like paper board, fiber board, and you just warped it up and stuff like that. It's just a very, very tiny little canvas to play with. And so I wanted to do some of that and start to do a little bit more. And so I'll show you the very first thing that I made. On this tiny little fiberboard loom, I made this. I don't even know which way is meant to go up. I think it was this way. And I made it just to play with the different fibers, play with different textures. I had seen something that I really liked with a lot of the sumac technique, where you're taking a lot of roving and then working it into the weaving so that it looks almost like knit stitches that are laid on its side. I think it's actually really an interesting and fun technique and cool texture and all that kind of stuff. But this was just a tiny thing that came off of this loom, and it was just an experiment. But I wanted to do more of this. So then a little bit later on last year, I think, maybe it was last year, I think. So later on that year, I was obsessed with this idea of working at a larger scale because, you know, a tiny little frame loom, you can only do so much. It's just for playing, just for experimenting. So I got super inspired. I ran out to the paint supply store, like the artist supply store, and I bought a whole bunch of these canvas stretcher frames, and I made myself my own frame because I didn't put any parts in it to make it actually. So I'll show you kind of what happened with that. This is the frame loom that I made. So these are just 4 canvas stretcher bars. And because I was so nervous about kids falling on any sort of nails that were in here, I chose not to put any nails in here, which meant that it was very difficult to warp this up. Usually you would just kind of nail some nails in here and then you can run your string back and forth to warp a loom like this. But because I didn't want nails sticking out, I just left it. I marked on about every ½ inch or so, and I used that kind of as a rough guide for where I wanted the warp threads to go. But I just looped the warp threads on here and then roughly moved them around, slid them around until they were sort of in the right place. And then I had spun some lumpy, bumpy yarn, specifically textured lumpy, bumpy yarn that I was going to put in this frame loom. And so I'd started to make some progress, but then I didn't really like how things were turning out. So this project was kind of abandoned, and it's kind of been sitting there for probably almost a year now. And not quite sure what we're going to do with that. But I'm still like really, really excited about this whole idea of weaving and weaving in a place that's a little bit more conducive to spending time also with my family and stuff like that. And so earlier this fall, I got to have a conversation with a tapestry weaver, and she's an author and artist and teacher, Marianne Moody. And so that episode, that interview is up on our audio podcast, and you can have a listen to that. But basically, I talked to her about tapestry weaving, about getting started, about getting into it, and then also how she does it with kids. And so one of the things that she said is that this tapestry weaving, it's very, very portable. You know, there's not a lot of sharp objects that are involved in this, and you can just put all the stuff into a little box and have that at the side, and it's just very portable in many ways. So I was obsessed with this idea. And so when we went to Knit City at the end of September, beginning of October last year, there was a booth called Woven Wood Goods, and I bought myself a frame loom. And so this is the frame loom that I ended up buying. And it's beautiful. There's no nails. Everything here is nice and smooth. There's like little slots cut out here so that way you can put your warp threads in. It's lovely and beautiful. And then I also bought this very lovely indigo dipped yarn needle to go with this. But I held on to this loom for maybe 5 months without putting any yarn on it, without putting any warp yarn on it, without putting anything on it. And it just sat there looking at me every day like, why did you buy me if you're not going to do anything with me? And a lot of it was just, I was really scared. I was really nervous about putting something on here and not having it turn out. I think, we all spend a lot of time on Instagram surfing other people's projects, and you see a lot of things that are beautiful and inspiring and gorgeous, and they look like they've been very well made, very well designed, very well thought out, and it's paralyzing in some ways to be looking at all of those beautiful inspirational pieces and thinking, well, I don't really know how to do that, or I don't know really where to start. And that was kind of what held me back in a lot of ways. I was looking at this loom. It's a blank canvas. What do I make with it? What am I going to put on it? What design am I going to put on this thing? And so the big push that got me to finally put something on the loom is that the next issue of Make and Hue, our sort of extended blog magazine sort of thing, is coming out in middle of April. And so our theme for the Make and Hue #2 is going to be texture. And so one of the things that I wanted to write about was using spinning fiber, using fiber to add texture to weaving. And so it sort of forced me with this assignment that I had to go out and actually make something to demonstrate how spinning fiber could be used in a way to add texture to weaving. So I finally warped it up and started to add some yarns to it. And so the yarns that I added to it, these are all superwash worsted, the yarns that I added to this, these are all superwash soft. So it's an 80% superwash merino and 20% nylon. It's kind of like a bulky weight yarn. And I started with the bulky because the bulky will cover more square footage faster. So I thought, well, I'm just gonna make something that's a little bit quicker, to work with. So we have a lot of superwash soft in here for the most part. And then this is spinning fiber. This is the Polworth and Silk spinning fiber that we happen to have. And this one, it was in the Anthem colorway. So it's a little bit of a splashy colorway. It's a little bit more erratic. It's not hand painted. So the color distribution is very random. And so I wanted that to look kind of cobbly. Now the blue that's in here, this Beach House blue, this is our Flax and Silk Fine, which is a linen and silk blend. And this is just leftover yarn. So I had just finished knitting a shawl with this yarn that I will show you guys, I think, next week. And the shawl is for the spring collection. It's one of the patterns in the spring collection. So I just finished knitting that. And so this was just some yarn that was left over that I thought I would pop into this whole thing. But every step of the way, this was a scary, freaky project because I would put a little bit of yarn on and then I would be questioning myself, well, what do I do next? Does it look good like this? Should I add more color here? Should I make this wavy? Should I make it angular? What should I do? And so it's really sometimes hard to know what to do because when we're coming from sort of the knitting world, a lot of the knitting projects that we all work on are being worked from instructions. We see something we like on Ravelry, and I don't know about you, but then I will buy the pattern, download the pattern, hoard the pattern, save the pattern, and then when I finally decide to make it, I am following the instructions about how much yarn to use, about maybe what colors to use, about maybe what combinations of textures to use, all of these kinds of things. A lot of decisions have been made for you, and then you follow the instructions in order to get the result that you want. And so there's something about that process which is very satisfying and very easy and very accessible and very relaxing because a lot of those decisions have been made for you. But when you're working on a piece like this is like a painting and you're looking at a blank canvas and you're thinking, what do I put on next? What's going to look good? What's the design going to be? And I know that a lot of weavers do sketch out their layouts ahead of time and have a design in mind, and they might put it behind the frame so that they know where to work and all this kind of stuff. But I was working very organically from whatever my intuition was telling me. So if I wanted this shape to be a little bit like this, or this shape to taper off this way, I was doing it as I went and filling in the gaps and filling the blanks as I went. So there was a couple of things in here. There was like the fear of getting started, fear of the unknown. This is a new fiber craft for me. I mean, I knit and I crochet a little bit, and I spin and I dye and I weave, but weaving on a tapestry loom or doing this kind of frame loom weaving was something relatively new to me. And so there's just a fear of, well, what if I make a mistake? What if it looks ugly? What if nobody thinks it's any good? But I think that that's where I started to catch myself. And it was like, who cares if nobody thinks it's any good? It only matters if I think it's any good. It only matters if I like what the result is. It doesn't matter. Like I could take this and show it to a whole bunch of people and say, oh, well, do you think I should have used this color in here? Or should I have, added this? Or should I have just left that out? Or all of that kind of stuff. But in the end, it only matters what you think. And the only way that you will get better at making what you're going to be making, the only way that you will make better decisions about the things that you're making is by doing it more. And so I was just reminded of this because you guys might know Leah Churchley. She is my assistant. She's my assistant when we're filming the School of SweetGeorgia stuff, and she helps out with the blog, and she has been just doing a lot of things for us at SweetGeorgia. But she also has some other projects that she started on the side. She started an Etsy store and all these kinds of things. And just recently, she learned how to spin yarn from scratch for the first time. And she was telling me about her yarns that she was spinning, every week there was a new skein, and every week the skein got a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And I remember back to when I first started learning how to spin. I didn't know how to spin. I was figuring it out from a spindle and a photocopy handout and trying to read the instructions and trying to understand how this thing all worked. And the yarn that I made was terrible. Like a lot of people who spin their first yarns, they keep those first skeins as like a memory piece, like memorabilia. I threw mine out because it's awful. It was just like a mushed up lump of fiber. It was terrible. And so it just reminded me that we all have to start somewhere, that of course, the very first thing that you make is not going to be awesome. The very first thing that you make is going to be like some random lumpy bumpy thing. And eventually, over time, by just doing it more and more and more, you will get better, and you'll be able to make better decisions about what you're making if you follow your intuition. So as I was working on this piece, what I had to decide for myself was to let go. I had to let go of any feelings of wanting to make sure that this was perfect, and just really go with the flow, really think about just embracing experimentation. So I think that that's the first thing. If any of you are going through a similar challenge, looking at your creative process and things that you're making and being really scared about moving forward, or scared of trying new things, or scared of trying a new craft altogether, I would really encourage you guys to let go of the idea of achieving perfection in any way, and then just embrace experimentation. And then the second thing that I had to do with this piece, and that I encourage you to do as well, is to follow your intuition. Follow what your voice is telling you about the project that you're trying to make. This is a whole new realm. This is not following instructions. This is really about developing an artistic sense, an artistic intuition about what do you think looks good? What do you think you want to do with the yarn? What do you think you want the final piece to look like? So following your intuition, following your inner voice to produce your own work. So I am going to be taking more photos of this piece and writing a little article about this to go in the Make and Hue that's coming out mid-April. And also Leah is going to be writing an article about her experience with the first 28 days of learning how to spin. And we'll be taking some photos and showing you sort of her before and after skeins of her hand spun. So that might be interesting to some of you guys who might be thinking about picking up spinning as well. So if any of you guys are thinking about starting a new craft, I would love to hear about what you are feeling going into that, how you manage to overcome that fear, how you jump in and start a new craft if you're excited about something. I would love to hear how you guys are doing that. So with that, thank you guys so much for being here. I hope that you like this episode. I hope that you like this little conversation. If you have any questions, please do leave them down in the comments below. I would love to chat with you about this. And if you like this video, please hit like and hit subscribe if you want to see more. I know that next week we're going to be doing a little overview of all the pieces that are coming out in our spring collection for SweetGeorgia. So I'm going to be showing you garments and things like that. So come back next Friday and we're going to do that. So that's it for this week. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.